Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Cash Flow Positive. I'm your host, Kenny Bedwell, and we're going to be talking about how to prepare, position, and profit from selling an STR. Now, why the heck would we sell an STR? Well, here is reality. If you are trying to scale and grow your rental portfolio over time, okay, maybe grow to bigger and have commercial assets, you will sell a short-term rental. In fact, the average short-term rental host sells their property after about 5 years, after 5 years, excuse me. And so we really need to understand and kind of prepare ourselves, even though our properties could be performing well or maybe not performing well. And so how do we best prepare to sell given current market conditions? What are the strategies that we can position ourselves in the best way possible to capture the most equity? That's what we're going to be diving into on the show today. And so to do that, I have brought on a special guest, Madeline Blum, the pit bull of the Smokies. She's an agent, a realtor. She owns over 8 short-term rentals throughout the Southeast. One of a good friend of mine. And we have clients use her in the Smokies. She is excellent. And she's going to tell us exactly what we need to hear. And she's going to be very frank and direct. And so without further ado, Madeline, welcome to the show. Tell us more about yourself.
Well, I am a real estate investor and agent here in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. I own 8 short-term rentals throughout the southeastern region, and 3 of those properties are here in the Smokies. And I also have invested in a hotel deal in New Orleans.
What, really? How's that going?
I don't know. I gotta check in.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, yeah, the roof is being finished today. So anyway, we just got our permit too. So anyway, that's going to be a fun episode when I break all that stuff down. But we're in the heart of the renovations. So, well, cool, Madeline. Thanks for being on the show. So when I reached out to you, you mentioned something that I have never talked about on the show, and that is essentially, repositioning or positioning to sell. And I first want to start out by telling people before we just jump right in. Most people will make money in the short-term rental space, not from the cash flow, but from the equity and the appreciation of their property. So yes, if you buy a property and you're just holding it and it's like cash flowing each year, think about it could be 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000. But the amount of appreciation and the amount of equity, especially if you get a property that's going to cash flow a lot, it becomes more valuable. The amount of appreciation people can get in a short amount of time by buying the right property, I'm going to preface that because that's really important. Right. And then it also making money too is significantly more than what they would get from a cash flow standpoint. And so where I'm going with this is like, we're not actually buying to just hold on to all these properties forever. We have to reposition and sell at some point. And some of us, depending on the success of the properties, could sell a lot sooner than others. And in fact, the average STR host sells within about 5 years or less. So it's relatively, boom, boom, boom. So let's dive into this of repositioning and selling. How do you prepare to sell? And how do you know from your experience as an agent, how do you know when to sell?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I feel like where we are today and where we were 5 years ago, it's a completely, different space that we're in. Mm-hmm. It really just depends on where you have bought. So, I can speak from experience from where I am. I'm in North Carolina, Florida, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Okay. I do find that the Smoky Mountains in particular, just because that's where I sell and I own, the most here, we have seen that things have been appreciating, since 20, and things have been going up, at an exponential rate, right? So I would say at the peak of the market, I would say it was 2022. Okay. Mm. Things were selling at top dollars. And since then, we have started to see a dip in, in decline in, purchase prices. But we also started to see an abundance of homes starting to go, on the market for sale. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, a lot of what you're buying today or trying to sell today, if it's a bigger property, let's say a 5-bedroom plus, we have found that those have the highest appreciation and they are still continuing to appreciate. In the last year, I will say that the smaller ones have taken a dive. However, I have seen and have sold properties that have really good revenue, right? And I know a lot of people will say, well, I don't really care about the revenue, but there are investors, new investors that actually that's all they care about.
Right.
And so if you can sell a property, right? It's a cash flowing business. If you can sell a property that from the beginning you established it, put in the money to redesign them, bought in a really valuable, place. Let's consider, location. Location is really important. Buying a property that has views. Again, I'm talking about the mountains. If you're at the beach, beachfront or close to, that first row. Those are the properties that you'll be able to sell first. And that's what the data has shown. Anything here in the Smokies that has a view, has really good numbers, is kind of ready to go. And even technically, if it's not ready to go with the design, those are the first ones to go. At the end of the day, people do want to see historical data. And a lot of owners in today's market are in a really bad position because the historical data is really bad. Considering whether they're self-managing, they can be really poor operators. Is it with a really poor management company, which there are many in the area? I mean, that's just the reality. And so those are the ones that are struggling. And that is why I said to you, Kenny, we definitely let's talk about how to position ourselves to sell real estate in today's market so that you're able to walk away with a profit. And Mike, I don't want to say many, but I will tell you that I have one client in particular who I've partnered up with. He's a genius. What he's done in the last 5 years is pretty incredible. All of the properties that he has sold, and these properties were not, these super properties that we talk about. They were pretty average properties. However, his revenue management game is on point. Basically, this guy sold. I was just basically the liaison between like him and the buyer, basically just walking this deal along, right? The numbers itself sold these properties. So that's an interesting angle, right? So a property doesn't have to be this amazing, super property. If you dial in and know your data and really can, work those numbers, I mean, that in itself is a selling point. And I'm telling you, this guy, he had like 10 in the Smokies and he wound up selling like 7. And I literally did nothing. He brought the buyers to me and I was a liaison just facilitating the paperwork.
Gotcha. No, that's really interesting. So he was using he had revenue management that was on point, to quote you. So what other, I guess, strategies or what other things do you see help sell properties for a profit?
That's a great question. It goes back to what we should be teaching our clients when they are purchasing short-term rentals. Okay. So finding properties in a good location, but then taking a look at the property and determining what can be done to redesign the space to make it profitable and who is going to be your ideal guest, right? Like who is that targeted avatar? And so negotiating that, it's not so much even negotiating, but having a conversation with clients, with buyers, and having them understand that if your goal is not to invest anywhere from 20, 10, and again, typically in the Smokies, I personally don't feel that you need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. I feel that, with at least $10,000 per bedroom, you can create a really great product. And I have created that with the spaces that I have. I design on a budget and my places are very, very nice. Listing optimization is on, again, I like to use the word on point because I do it right. It's on point. And then, pictures sell the story. And I've spoken about that on your podcast and different podcasts that I have been. But truly, really having guests understand that there needs to be a budget in place so that you can create a magical place that people want to stay in, because again, you're creating an experience. So from the jump, if you're able to prep your clients and kind of coach them along along that path, they will have a much more successful property than someone that has put no money into it. And like you see today in today's market, lots of these properties, they need work. And so things have come down, properties have come down in value just because there's so much for sale. And I always tell my clients, I mean, I've been very listing heavy for the last couple of years. In the last, let's say 2 months, I've been getting more activity with buyers. And I've had buyers along the way, but I'm very particular. And I tell them, listen, if you don't have the money, hey, guess what? We can negotiate, right, that allowance and structure it into the deal. And I've been doing this from the beginning. And that's the only way that I sell real estate. So let me give you an example. I have a client of mine that came to me, and he kind of saw the writing on the wall. The Smokies was getting very competitive. Occupancy was coming down. ADR was getting lower. And so he and his partners decided that they were going to invest $20,000 into their cabin. They didn't do that initially. They paid $650 for a 4-bedroom, 3-bath in Pigeon Forge. Pretty views, right? Not the most spectacular, but it had views. Check that off. They noticed that their numbers were going down. They invested $20,000 in the slow season, so in January. Okay, they kept their data. They were doing decent. They weren't doing great. They were noticing that the income was declining from, let's say 23 to 24, and that's when they invited and decided to invest the $20,000. Well, they tested it, right? Did the renovations, and they noticed that their income, guess what? Started to go up. And so for them, they're like, okay, this is wonderful. Let's continue. And let me add, this client of mine was also a very good operator, really good with revenue management, really on top of the data. And so when he came to me and said, hey, listen, Madeline, at this point, my partners and I would like to sell. And I said, great, shoot, send over the link, send over your financials. I was very impressed. And again, it just proves what it is that I'm talking about, that when you invest in the design and making things pop and pictures, it will help increase your revenue. Well, this year, this year, I was able to sell it for them within 30 days. We sold it at $770,000. So in a market where everything is down and things are selling for a lot less, they were able to take, that 650, so let's say they spent 670,000, but they were able to make a profit of $100,000.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's huge.
At a time where a lot of people that bought back in 2021 in today's market, depending on where they bought, they're either selling for a little bit of a profit or breaking even. And unfortunately, a lot of people are just taking losses.
Yeah.
I was ecstatic for them. But again, this is what I want people to understand. When you're buying an investment property, you're buying a business, right? And then in turn, you're selling a business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it comes a lot to, and you let me know your thoughts on this too, but it comes down to just like how we talk about all the time, like know your guest avatar. Well, it's like know the buyer avatar and the buyer habits. So when you're talking to your agent, you're thinking about selling your property, like who is going to be buying this property? If it's another STR investor, what are they going to look for? So in my opinion, in my experience, I should say, not even my opinion, my experience, the biggest ask that I get from people is, number one, I want a turnkey property. No one likes throwing in their own cash into a deal. The least amount of cash you can put in, the better, right? And the majority of buyers are looking for the perfect turnkey property that's already furnished, already looks good. So I think if you can check that box, that'll make your property a lot more sellable. And then the second thing, another big one too, in my opinion, that I see a lot, or just from my experience, I stopped saying my opinion. My experience, because this is literally my experience, are properties that are updated, that don't look like your grandma's house. And it's not, they could be turnkey or they need a few things, but they look nice. They have the wow factor. I joke around all the time with my clients who are physicians, and I talk to them. I'm like, what kind of property are you looking for? And I'm always like, are you looking for the physician special? And they're like, what's that? And I start showing them these like high luxury end properties. They're like, oh yeah, that's what I want. That's what I want. And they're always like either super modern or just like all updated, like luxury feel, borderline turnkey or turnkey. And but like those, it brings in the emotional side of buyers. And hopefully people listening to the podcast are like, kind of, as a buyer, you don't buy purely on emotion, but most people do.
Yeah.
And so as the seller, focusing on selling, like understand who you're selling to and what they're looking for and what triggers emotion, because ultimately the purchase is going to be emotional for most people. What are your thoughts? What say ye?
I agree. But I always this is why I like selling investment properties. Because people are a little less emotional. And when they get emotional, at the end of the day, I just have to bring them back to reality and ask them, I go back to what my first question to them is, what is your goal? What is your goal in investing?
Right.
Why are you investing? What is your, cash on cash goal that you're looking to make? I mean, you have, this beautiful property and it's, completely turnkey and super modern, which I really like, right? But sometimes the numbers just don't work. Yep. Especially when you're talking about limitations in occupancy, especially here in the Smokies, you absolutely need to know the regulations wherever it is that you are buying. Understand, zoning ordinances, what regulations have changed. I mean, a lot has changed here in the Smokies. A lot. When you look at what's on market, there's a lot of 4 bedrooms for sale. 4 bedrooms are really struggling in this market because you're competing with pool cabins, right? They've built an abundance amount of those. And we've had regulatory changes where the county does not want you sleeping 13 or more if it was built in 2016 and newer without having your certificate of affidavit, or your, I think that's what it's called. If that doesn't match your certificate of occupancy, you have a problem. And to change that costs tens of thousands of dollars. And, when you have people that are already struggling, they're not trying to lay out anywhere, from 20 to 50,000 plus if they don't have sprinklers.
Right.
So, going back to the question about, being emotional, I always just go back to my clients and ask them, let's go back to your why, and let's go back to what your goals are. In today's market, you have tons of options. Let's just kind of look at the different deals. And at the end of the day, underwrite the deal using your pro forma, because numbers don't lie. And that usually gets them back on track.
Gets them back on track, yes. Yeah. But yeah, for the most part, people, man, I see it all the time. And usually, I had this happen recently. A guy last year, he was vetting us, in terms of like, oh yeah, like, I'm thinking about using you guys. Like, we talked about the returns and the types of properties, and then he just ghosted us, meaning like he went and tried to figure it out on his own. Comes back this year and he's like, yeah, I just bought this cabin and it's just not doing anything. And I was like, well, it's a really nice cabin, but you paid way too much for it. And he's like, yeah, I know. We just wanted something new, and we wanted the position special. And we just, it was like one of the things, and he got emotional about it. And then afterwards learns the lesson, and that's usually how it happens when you're like, man, I don't like paying out of pocket every month for a property that I don't even go and visit or care to visit, and that's where it gets uncomfortable.
That's the other thing. How often are you visiting? Is it truly an investment property, or is it more of a, luxury, personal kind of experience that you're also trying to add to this? And most times, like, no, maybe we'll be there once a year. And it's like, well, that's an investment property.
Yeah, exactly. So that's, taking the emotion out when you're buying is really, really important. But I do think sellers need to understand that you are trying to sell a business. And obviously, if you have great numbers, that's going to sell itself. That's the number one thing. You don't have great numbers, then I think you really have to rely on the emotional piece of it. this is a beautiful property. This is updated. And, like, here are some ideas for potential to increase revenue. Oh, I hear that a lot when people buy properties. I'm like, why did you buy that? And they're like, well, there's this potential I can do to it that they got sold on for whatever reason, whether it's true potential or they're just getting BS to. So it's one of those things where I find that, if we can stay logical, like you said, look at the numbers, the pro forma, like you mentioned, that helps us stay on track. And the goal, thank you for saying that. That was a really good piece of advice. So anyway, all right. Let me ask you a harder question. Okay. So you're in the Smokies. We know what's going on in the Smokies with the market shifting. Rents are falling, lots of properties for sale, record high number of properties for sale. Obviously, there's the change of regulations and things. What if you are that person that is losing money and you are ready to call it quits and get out? But you're really like, how do you like position yourself to sell your property? What would be the best strategy? So, and in this scenario I'm giving you, I know I have some kind of limitations here, but in this scenario I'm giving you, I mean, they probably need to be open to investing in the property a little bit. But like, what is your, I mean, because you deal with this, I know you deal with this. What do you tell people?
Kenny, I have had these conversations for the last.
They're hard. They're really hard.
And I have to tell you, people come to me. It's like, I feel like people see me as this like hard ass, like, I'm passionate and I'm like a problem solver, which I am. I'm all those things, but I'm also a realist. And so I have to have these hard conversations with people that come to me. And I will tell you, at the peak, I maybe had like 35 listings. Right now I'm in like the 20s. But you have no idea how many people I have said no to. And not that I don't want to help them, but know that maybe this isn't the right time for them to sell. Hey, let's kind of strategize and talk about what we can do to get you to a position that maybe you can sell before the end of the year, right? Especially with 100% bonus depreciation back. Like, that's huge for investors. I say, so I've helped them, basically giving them strategies like what we've been talking about. Can we do a light refresher? Maybe invest $5,000, some 25 to 10,000, depending on the size of the home. And then I have, resources that I give them to help them with that. But then also, I can't do a whole lot if you got a really bought a shitty buy. I mean, that's just a harder sell for me. But again, I truly do believe in revenue management, especially if it's with someone that truly understands the data in our market, because it's very convoluted. We have over 20,000 rentals. It's pretty competitive, right? But if you can work with someone, and I could say 3 good people in our market here that are doing a really good job that I've sent them to. I've sent clients to, and man, like, it works. Their numbers are improving. Yeah. Are they like mind-blowing numbers? No, because we're still dealing with some of these challenges, the design, the location, et cetera. But revenue management does work if you're having someone do it correctly that truly understands data and market trends and all of those things. So my advice is, invest a little bit in redesign and absolutely work with a revenue manager that is specialized in the area. And then reposition, and then kind of, then I tell them, in the next 3 to 4 months, 3 to 6 months, let's kind of see where you are, because I can sell that. That I can sell as a realtor.
Gotcha. What if I was like, okay, Madeline, my property, I need to get rid of this. I'm willing to spend $5,000 into refreshers. What specifically should I be targeting that you have found in your experience? It's a tricky question. That like areas or rooms, or is it linens? Is it like, what exactly should I be spending the $5,000 on that would be beneficial?
That's a great question. Actually, I'm going through this right now with one of my clients. So my partner and I started Ignite Revenue Management. So we do, revenue management, and we do property management. I'm kind of like hands off, but I believe so much in what Chris is doing that, we have a lot of conversations with a lot of clients that come to me because I do want to help them. At the end of the day, I want to help them, but I also have to be honest with them. And a lot of times I've had to say no to clients that I just don't feel we really can help. And at that point, I send them to someone else. So in particular, there's one client that came to me, referred by someone. It's a 4-bedroom cabin. Oof, we know that those 4 bedrooms are really struggling because you're competing with pool cabins. So what can we do to help this client? Well, the first thing we did was we took a look at the property and said, hey, do you know that we actually can try to fit in like a 5th bedroom here? Like that would be huge. Location is good. It's in a good location. But man, there's so many 4 bedrooms. Let's add a 5th bedroom. So that's one strategy, right? So seeing if you're able to add on additional living space. This is connected to city sewer, city water, so we don't have to worry about septic tank, septic permits, or any of that. So that's one way. Is there a way that we can add more livable space, adding more heads? And then the other thing is taking a look at basic things like your linens. Here in the mountains, and again, I'm talking here because this is what I sell and where I mostly own. The bears and the deer and all that is so outdated. And that is what I see. I see so much of that in these pictures, and it's like, man, my eyes hurt. Let's get away from that. People want more of like a cleaner look, more modern. Yeah, you have the rustic, tongue and groove. That's all wood. You can't get rid of that. But hey, maybe we can accent a wall. Maybe we can accent some beams to break that color up, and it's just more aesthetically appeasing, right? So there's that. Do we change linens? Maybe change some of the pillows. And these are like little things. I sometimes suggest painting cabinets. That's not expensive. Painting cabinets is anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500. Considering the size of the kitchen. But those little things really do make such a difference. And then let's take a look at the outside. Can we actually possibly add a little fire pit area? Bill Fates has spoken about this, where people they underestimate the value of the outside space. We focus so much on the inside that a lot of times we have these blinders and aren't looking at what we can do to make the outside more appealing.
Right.
And so we've helped, clients create, a little small fire pit area. It's harder because of the terrain in the mountains, but whenever possible, whenever you can check off a fire pit area, that just, boosts you up in algorithm. So think suggestions like that. And again, obviously, after you do all of those things, what are you going to want to do? Get new pictures.
Right.
So to me, pictures is another, actually, that may be the cheapest thing to do. Is just to get new, better pictures. I see some of these properties people are trying to sell, and I'm like, wow. I'm shocked that they even did what they did with those just horrible, outdated pictures.
Yep.
So, little strategies. I mean, you can not spend a whole lot, or you can do a whole redesign, spend, $20,000 to $30,000. It's really just going to be dependent on the property, but you can make some really, you can make some decent changes with, let's say, $5,000.
In your experience with specifically the Smokies, what are some, like, from your buyer standpoint, what are some of your buyers, like what areas of the property are they kind of like, do they mention or like highlight, like they like to see, like a lot of people kind of look at kitchens, and you mentioned painting cabinets, but like our bathrooms talked a lot about, or is it more of the bedrooms, the game spaces, the living rooms, the outdoors? Like, what are some of these like spaces that you see your clients, the buyer side, really kind of focusing on more?
Value add is really important to me, especially, whenever possible. So for example, I bought a lake house here actually, I have 4 now here in Tennessee. I can't keep up. It's a good thing. It's a good problem. So for example, I bought a lake house in Tennessee. In the mountains, it's a little bit more challenging to find properties that have unfinished garages, unfinished spaces. I mean, they exist. They're unicorns. But for example, my lake house had an unfinished garage, and it had a mechanical room. I mean, crazy. So what did I do? I mean, of course, I finished the garage and made it into a really cool game room slash like bunk bedroom. And then I took that mechanical room, I moved my HVAC system because it was literally in the middle of this room. We pushed it all the way to the back of in the corner, back to the corner of the house, and I created a movie room. So right there, not only did I just add 2 additional rooms, I, added heating and cooling, and now I almost doubled the square footage of this property. So yeah, and I'm fully booked till, end of August, and I'm looking at the data around me. People are struggling. People are not renting as well. And so I feel that I'm doing really well, and I've positioned myself kind of like what we're talking about. I position myself to be in a good place, because let's say I want to turn around and sell that baby next month. I know that I'm making a nice profit on that. I did all the work, but I don't mind. I wouldn't mind putting it on the market for 100,000 more. And I think that I would really get it, because first of all, I feel that I underpaid for this property. Everything else around me on the water is like $1 million. Meanwhile, I paid $550 and got a $50,000 seller credit. I did good. So yeah, so back to what we were talking about, value add. Value add is really, really important to me. So can we take a room? Again, here in the Smokies, it's getting better because of all the different regulation changes. But if you're in the county limits, you cannot have someone sleeping in a room that has no windows, right? No form of egress. And sometimes you see these people putting beds in there. Well, now that could be like a cool game room. Or maybe we can turn that into a movie room. Not many people can check off that there's a movie room or a game room, designated with like cool LED lights, painted black. I mean, that's what I did with one of my places in Pigeon Forge. So it's a 3-bedroom with a game room. It was supposed to be a bedroom, and I said to my partner, nah, we're going to make this like a game room. Make it black, LED lights, turn it up, and it's my hero shop.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other tips or advice or tricks or whatever for people who are considering selling, whether to maybe scale or, maybe they want to exit, whatever it may be. The reasons could be good or bad or, whatever going on with the property. But any other tips that you give sellers in terms of like maybe when they should sell, how they should sell, questions to ask the listing, someone who's going to list their property, things like that?
It's a little bit of a loaded question, because my hopes are that people are buying properties and doing them the way that we have, we preach.
Yeah.
Buy them, you invest in the money into them and position them to be where I'm saying we are, right? Where I am. But the reality is many people are not. Mm-hmm. So I think going back to what I said before, investing in revenue management, increasing those numbers as much as they can before, if you're thinking of selling today, maybe if your numbers are poor and the performance and the reviews are not great, that's another thing that we didn't even talk about, right? You're trying to sell a property, but you got a really shitty cleaner. That doesn't help, because your reviews are going to be garbage. And your algorithm is going to be, in the toilet. And so that's, I feel like, where you open yourself up, where people start complaining about all these different things. And I don't know about you, but I love to read reviews. But I also see it as an opportunity where I say, okay, well, it's the cleaner, right? So I would say definitely making sure that you have a really good cleaner, making sure that, your appliances and things are functionable, making sure that you do inspections, especially in today's market when there's so much inventory. The last thing you want to do is go pending. Man, like you got somebody that's interested and then coming out of escrow, which we see a lot, because these properties are just older, like you mentioned, earlier. People don't want to buy these older cabins, but that is a lot of what you have here in the mountains. And so I think it's really important for sellers today to do pre-listing inspections.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a big one that we're not talking enough about. I've been having conversations and doing more of that with my clients so that they also have realistic expectations when someone comes in, and then we get into that, repair proposal conversation, and not have them freak out. Because at the end of the day, someone's got to take care of those issues.
Right.
And in today's market, it's not going to be the buyer.
Right.
So there's that piece, making sure that we know the overall condition of the home. And again, really investing a little bit of money to make it look appealing, to the eye. And, really working on, if you don't have that historical data, trying to increase your numbers as much as possible. And you know what? Sometimes shit just doesn't work out, and you may have to take a loss if you don't have the funds, right? Because that's where a lot of people are today. They're selling because they're not cash flowing and they don't have the money. So kind of like what Bill says, sometimes you just got to take a loss and move on.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's a hard one. That's a hard one to swallow, but you have to just be very true to yourself. Your agent has to be very honest with you. You have to really understand your market and where you are, and make those executive decisions that work best for you. But lean on resources in your community. Lean on resources, in that particular market, and pivot.
Well, there you have it, folks. Madeline Blum. She calls it how she sees it. No, that's good. I think having those frank conversations, people appreciate the frankness, because there are a lot of sellers today. We still hear, like they come in with this attitude of like, it's still 2021, 2020, I'm going to price my property here. And that's just not reality, And so I think one of the biggest things I want to add on to this too is making sure like you're working with a listing agent who isn't just like what I call a yes ma'am or yes sir, like just, like, oh yeah, the puppy dog. Yeah, absolutely. But they actually have like your intentions in mind. They tell you the game plan, and walk you through it and show you how they're going to, sell your property strategically. So anyway, well, cool. Anything else you want to add?
No, it was just, I as an agent myself and an investor, I'm a pain in the ass. And I provide the service that I want when I'm buying properties. No, don't yes me to every property, because not every property is a property.
Yep.
So I just think it's really making sure that you have these cohesive conversations with clients, and speaking to agents, but also buyers. Interview your agents. Ask them how many rentals they have. Ask them what they think in that particular market is going to help them stand out. What's important? For me, views are really important,
Right.
especially when it's so competitive. Amenities, any amenities that you can add, location, obviously location is another big one. And so I have had clients that have been with me trying to buy for a long time, and there's just sometimes the deal just isn't out there at that particular time. And I tell them, be patient. So I think being patient is another piece that we just need to be okay with. We're now in Q3, people. So
that's scary. You're right. We are.
Everyone's going to be looking for properties right now. It'll be interesting, but I think staying true to what it is that you really want will lead the path. And I think that sticking to what you feel your gut tells you won't steer you wrong. So
good stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's really good. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing these golden nuggets and telling us how it is flat out. So
listen, that's what I want. I want you to tell me how it is, Kenny. Don't sugarcoat me. If you don't think a property is gonna will perform or not, tell me. I will move on.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Madeline. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. This has been really good, especially focusing on the selling side, because remember, to scale, you do have to sell eventually. It's as easy as that. You will sell properties, and you need to be prepared for that. And the better prepare the plan, and all these little things that Madeline dropped will help you not only cash flow, but capture the most equity that you can possible given current market conditions. So, right. Well, thanks so much, Madeline, for being on the show. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you on another episode of Cash Flow Positive.